Hey guys, so as it turns out, I completely lied about not having a video coming out for the next 2 months, but here you go. Last month, I shot an interview with one of my profs from the UBC School of Music. You guys are going to meet Dr. Bob, otherwise known as Dr. Robert Pritchard, but he goes by Dr. Bob. He taught me Theory 100 and 201. He's a fantastic prof, really down to earth, but he has done so many huge projects. He's internationally known for his work in new media, music, and stuff like that. I'll let him explain it to you in this interview. There's a behind the scenes and bloopers video that's also coming out. Hope you guys don't mind that this interview is quite long, but it was very interesting, at least to me, and I hope it'll be interesting to you. A special hello to UBC music people. Making this video it made me feel pretty nostalgic. Made me think about you guys a lot. So I'm gonna miss you guys. Really love you guys. And yeah. So I hope you guys enjoyed this interview. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye. Hey guys, welcome to the i6 Studio Center. Dr. Bob is here, my very awesome guest for today. What is i6 Studio Center?
i6, the sound studio here, is part of the Institute for Computing, Information, and Cognitive Systems. That's where the i6 comes from. Mm-hmm. And as part of the mandate for research at i6, there's a focus in some areas on sound research and music performance. And that's why we built this particular studio.
Right, so this is all like government subsidized research center.
Comes through through government, very large government grants that built the entire building actually for research.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yes.
In addition to this studio, there's other studios as well. Can you talk about that?
There are other labs. This is considered to be a lab. So there are labs that do research in imaging. There's robotics labs. There are human computing interaction labs. Software development labs. There's a whole variety of labs. We're on the 7th floor, and all the way down to the basement there are labs in this building.
Have they all kind of existed for the last 4 to 5 years?
Since the building was constructed, yes.
Which was 4 to 5 years
4 to 5 years ago.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. What led you to kind of create this?
The space.
The space.
When the tenders went out for the construction, well, actually to put the grants together, there were a couple of profs, one in electrical engineering and one in computer science, who were quite interested in sound and music. And so they asked Professor Keith Hamill and myself to come on board and be part of the grant application process, and when the grant was successful, then to be part of the design team that developed this particular studio. Okay. You haven't always been in sort of this new media, new kind of technology plus music thing, right? You actually started as a Bachelor of Music student Back
here,
in 1974 at UBC. But during that time, actually, even in high school, I was working with tape recorders.
Really?
And, absolutely.
So you have been in this the whole time?
A long time. Prior to that, I didn't, but yeah.
So, but what did you major in when you were in...
I was a Bachelor of Music and Composition.
Oh.
And as part of that, but I was also in oboe performance.
Were you doing like a double major?
No, back then you had to be, as a composer, you had to do performance lessons as well, all the way through. So I took 4 years of oboe.
Is it not that way now?
I can't recall.
Oh.
And so I did that. And then in my master's, I went on and I studied at the University of Toronto with as a master's of composition. And I worked in the electronic studios at the Faculty of Music there. But I also worked across campus at the Computer Systems Research Group, working on what was called the Structured Sound Synthesis Project, which was a cutting-edge software-hardware development in computer music. At the time. Following that, I began teaching at Brock University, running the electroacoustic studio there, and gradually ended up teaching many other courses, such as modern history of music and counterpoint, 16th and 18th century counterpoint, and various theory courses, and running 3 years of electroacoustic music, different levels you could do there. And then I eventually left there and came to UBC to do my doctorate. And
did that feel weird?
It was like coming. We always knew we wanted to come back to the West Coast, so it was nice coming back to Vancouver.
Okay.
And but then having had a wife and 3 kids, so it was.
That must have been a big move.
It was a huge move.
Yeah.
It's a huge move. I essentially gave up a job as a professor at the university to come back to become a student again.
Oh my goodness!
And,
wow.
So worked my butt off, and I was very fortunate that UBC liked what I was doing, so they hired me. So I'm able to have a place like this to work as well.
That's amazing. When you were like in high school working with the tape recorders, like how did you get into that?
Well, because I'd been composing had tape recorders, these old reel-to-reel tape recorders that we would use to record the pieces I was writing at the time. But then we also, we were playing around with tape decks, and there was also the World Soundscape project happening at Simon Fraser at the time with Murray Schafer, and I was up in the interior. And they put out a call, and they wanted recordings, etc. So there was a big world broadcast or something.
So you were involved in that?
Not really. It was just a call that we put out tapes, and we sent tapes out, and they could be broadcast or something like that. But I wasn't part of the World Soundscape project per se.
Okay.
It was just something that I was interested in. And I was also quite...
So that was what was going on. Right?
That was going on. At the same time, I was quite my family was quite encouraging about contemporary music in terms of the LPs that were being brought into the house by Charles Warren and Harry Partch and Murray Schafer and Stockhausen.
So your family had a huge part in...
Huge part. Everybody in my family studied music, and my mother's a professional musician. My father was a very, very good amateur musician, and 4 of the 5 kids got music degrees, for better or worse, And,
I actually ended up being the only one getting a music degree, but my whole family is pretty musical.
Right. Okay. So
Is that weird?
Yeah. Well, they were wise.
Thank you. Well, why do you say that?
Well, it's just we have a saying: you don't go into music unless you have to go into music.
You know that? Yeah.
I mean, if somebody says, "I really like music, should I get a music degree?" No, that's not a reason to get a music degree. Because find me somebody who says, "I don't like music." Everybody likes music. Yeah. Everybody likes music. So that's not a reason to get a music degree.
Yeah, that's actually why I ended up in music, is because I really had no other choice. Yeah, I mean, like, flute was, like, the only thing that I was
You considered dentistry, but then it seemed to be too far along.
Yeah. Well, because actually my parents, like, they're not, like, the normal Asian parents that get you to do, like, really practical science degrees. They're not quite like that, no. So they were actually really encouraging of me going into music, because I think they could see that was really the only thing that I could really do. Hey, we share something in common, though.
Yes.
We're both pastors' kids.
We're both PKs.
Yeah, we're
That's
both
correct.
PKs.
That's
yeah,
correct.
yeah. Did that ever affect your music type, like the way you compose music, or what you went
absolutely.
into?
It has an effect on me in that all of the pieces I've written for the past 8, 10, 12, whatever years, all of my pieces tend to deal with life and death and transformation, or life, death, resurrection, or some sort of transformation, whether you look at it from a religious point of view, from a spiritual point of view, or just from a straight symbolic point of view. So there's that influence of my upbringing, very much so.
Right. Did you have any, like, PK angst, any of that?
PK, well, I remember being... in Cubs, I never got to be in the skits at the Christmas presentations because I always had to be the MC because I was the minister's kid. So I was the one who...
that's horrible!
I know, I am scarred for life, and as a result, I showboat every time I'm in front of a class. It's my way of getting even or something. Yeah.
Well, that's why you teach so well. Because, you've been practically trained since you were little.
That's right. I mean, all my lessons turned into sermons, okay?
Yeah. Well, like good ones.
That's right. You don't resolve the tritones, you're going straight to hell.
Okay? But I mean, like when I was in your class, right? Like I could hear, like, very distinctly that there was something very distinctly different about the way you taught versus other people.
Yeah, my jokes are worse than anybody else's.
Yeah, pretty much.
Pretty much.
Yeah. I noticed, like, we actually tend to crack pretty racy jokes. Do you notice that? Is that
you mean as PKs?
Yeah.
It's part of the rebellion thing.
I think so, because my brother does it a lot too. Yeah. Any of your PK angst, did that get into your music at all?
No.
It's more
that's the life that you expect. That's the life you know.
Okay. So it's more the sort of experiences in terms of, like, what, like, the sort of spiritual or whatever.
Yeah, and mostly dealing with the big question, what comes after.
Well, yeah.
That's the big question. So I try and explore those aspects of the way I approach that question. I try and explore that in my music.
I see.
It's not hard and fast saying this means this means this means this. It's just the approach that I take. And certainly if you didn't know that, it wouldn't compromise, I think, how you approach the piece of music. I mean, when you have a piece performed, the reaction and the approaches and the reactions are as individual as every listener in the concert hall. So,
do people pick up on the themes of, like, you know, what comes after?
Not, well, in the case of many of my works involve interactive video, and the titles give some sense of that. For instance, there's a interactive accordion and video piece called Breathe on Me, which comes from the old hymn tune, Breathe on Me, Breath of God. And so some people will pick up on that. But other pieces like Strength, people might not pick up on that. It's the one with the, for saxophone and interactive video and sound. And that one for me has a lot of symbolism in it, dealing with the body and dealing with water as a symbol. But it's not necessarily, I think people perceive the depth of the piece and the depth of meaning, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a spiritual depth. It's just a meaningful artistic experience for them.
So it's more about the experience than
an actual being able to say, and I think that's because I think so much of what we deal with within spiritual matters is metaphorical.
Yeah.
So I tend to shy away from very specific attributes, either in religious reading or in religious interpretation. My upbringing is a very liberal one, so I don't take this definitive approach, and that I think comes back in my music and in my imagery. What it means to me, I'm not concerned if it doesn't mean that to other people.
Yeah. Now, another thing that we, you know, I mentioned this, that I was going to go into arts, visual arts, right? You were in visual arts too.
I did some visual arts studies in pre-university. I was doing art lessons in a variety of media, etc. And then during my time here, especially recently in the past 10 years or so, 15 years, whatever, I've done more visual art media. And I also, I oversee, I'm co-supervising visual art students who deal with sound art. So I have a contacts with the visual art faculty as well.
What is sound art?
Well, for instance, when visual arts do sound installations with multiple speakers and they're recording and presenting the sound within the context of, from a visual art aesthetic rather than an electroacoustic compositional aesthetic, perhaps, then so there's another approach to visual arts that does involve.
Wow, so that really kind of like
it
blurs the.
Absolutely, it's very much a blurring of distinctions. So, yeah.
Wow. Like for you, like your visual art stuff, like your photography and all that stuff, and like this stuff, like this sort of research stuff. Like, does it blur at all?
It blurs to some extent, but I tend to use the visual arts in support of the music. For me, the music is the primary focus. So often when I've been commissioned to do a new piece, or I've decided to do a new piece that's going to involve interactive electronics and visuals, I need to start from the sound, what the piece is going to sound like, and what the instrument is I'm writing for, how I'm going to process that sound, how the performer is going to control the processing and the diffusion of the sound, and how the piece is structured as a musical entity. I very much want the music to be able to stand on its own. And indeed, the accordion piece that I did, accordion and visuals, which has been performed several times, was most recently recorded on CD without the visuals, and it stands as an accordion and electronics piece for that reason. I would prefer that it have the visuals, but and in the near future, I hope to be able to put out a DVD of several of my pieces to show what they sound like. But I was quite okay with the accordionist recording it and performing in concert without the visuals, because it does stand on its own.
So what are the plans for the future for all this stuff?
For all of this, well, the immediate plans, I'm doing research, finishing off multi-year research grants in gesture-controlled speech synthesis. So you wear cyber gloves and you can synthesize phonemes with your hands, so you can try and tag sound together. It's a little bit like Minority Report as you move.
Oh my goodness, that is so cool!
So,
how long has this been going on?
I've been doing that since 2004, and it's based on research that started in 1996 from Sid Fells, who's an electrical engineer here, and that was part of his doctoral thesis. And then when he moved from Toronto to UBC, I got in touch with him, and we started talking, and eventually we got funding in place, and so I've been doing that for the past 7 years.
Wow. So, like, but the conception was, like, more than 10 years ago, like
Well, people have been wrestling with this issue of speech synthesis for years and years, but the idea of real-time speech synthesis where you can control emotion, that's a really difficult problem. And,
well, yeah, because there's always a delay, right?
well, normally what happens is you get text-to-speech converters. Those are very, very common. And when you're on a phone tree, you're listening to text-to-speech. Or another type of concatenative synthesis where phonemes then are all joined together and they're responding to formulas or pre-recorded, etc. Or sometimes you're just listening to tapes or samples. But being able to do emotion on the fly in real time is very difficult. So that's what we've been working with. And we've been moderately successful. It still sounds, I say it sounds like a duck in a bottle, but you can, if you understand what the duck is saying, you can sort of pick out where we're going with the conversation.
Right.
So that's one area that we're working with. I'm on another research project as a co-researcher. We're looking at automated score following. So the computer listens to what performers are doing, and we can track by pitch, so the computer follows in the score, but computers can't follow polyphonic music very well at all yet, because it's too complicated. Our ears and brains are much better at that, obviously. So we've been working with accelerometers on string players to be able to track where they are in a score. We've been doing vision tracking with pianists, looking at their hands, using cameras, overhead cameras, look at their hands where they are, to track where they are on the keyboard. And we're expanding that.
Is it like motion sensor? Like,
motion sensors.
Do they have to like wear little? Like...
No, and it's just a single camera over top. That's what's really slick about this research.
They don't even have to wear.
They don't have to wear anything.
Sensor
We're just
things?
tracking what they've done. We record them doing it once, and then we track how they do it again, which is very cool. And now we've started doing that with dancers to be able to track the accelerometers on. We put an accelerometer on a dancer's ankle, and we track where they are in a score.
And they don't have to wear motion sensor things either.
Nope. They're wearing an accelerometer, which is a motion sensor, but they don't have to wear the infrared dots or anything like that.
Yeah, they don't have to wear these little golf balls.
Exactly.
Little,
Exactly. They don't have to. It's just an accelerometer, so it's less inhibiting, and they can wear their normal dance costume, etc., and things like that. So it's pretty cool. It's
I'm wondering why films don't use that.
Because they're after something a little different.
Okay.
Yeah, they're after being able to impose.
So you can't do it if you're imposing an image on it.
Well, we could impose another image, but we're not interested in imposing an image. We're interested in just being able to track where we are in a score. And why would we want to know when we can follow with our eyes? Because the performer can control how fast we're going through the score, but we're in the score. We can actually embed thousands of computer commands in there to control spatialization or image projection or processing or messaging or changing how the processing works on other instruments. So things that would be too difficult for us to do in real time, we can set those up in the score. And
wow, so is all this going to like culminate in like a new like a program or something?
Yeah, we've been writing the software, and what we'll be doing is writing pieces that are the test of the software. And so what will be quite interesting is we'll be able to have performers interacting, and they'll all be on the same score, but at a certain point in the score we'll have messages that might say, for instance, well, the video artist who's using Wii controllers and things to paint, the way she's working is going to control how the saxophonist's sound is processed. And as the saxophonist plays, maybe the sounds that come out of her, the frequency analysis of that is going to control how the sensors on the dancer are configured. So when she's dancing, maybe she's also controlling the video in some way. So this interactive, it all becomes quite interactive, but each person can become the main controller at a certain point.
It's very organic.
Yeah, and it's a change of role. Instead of just being a performer, my job is to produce sound, and I have to pay attention to this person who's controlling the tempo. It's like chamber music.
Yeah.
Okay, at this point, I'm soloing, I'm controlling the tempo.
Yeah, and then it's a sort of like a push and pull.
Exactly, and you influence everybody around you. So it's a much more interactive environment.
Yeah.
In the past, it's been quite responsive. I do something, and that's going to cause other things to happen.
Exactly.
But now
sort of like a one-way thing, but now it's two-way.
Now it's two-way. We
or
hope
multiple ways.
Multiple ways. Yeah, exactly. Like chamber music.
Yeah.
So.
Which is why I'm interested in.
That's why. So.
Thank you so much for.
Thank you.
Doing this interview with me. Okay, everyone. So this is Dr. Bob, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye. I'm gonna make you guys jealous now.
Oh, this will be good.
Oh yeah.
Everybody does that with mooncake.
Okay, this is just getting really awkward now. Okay.
What?